Right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the next session of this series of AI and technology and catering. This is with Tom Brand from Amazon Just Walk Out. Welcome back if you've been on the previous session. So just a bit of housekeeping for the session. You'll know your mic is muted, but you can communicate with myself or Tom in the chat function or using the Q&A function. If you want to introduce yourself, make sure you change to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your responses. And then use the Q&A function to ask the questions. But we do have some pre-prepared questions which were submitted as part of your joining process. The session's being recorded, and the recorded session will be in the past events of the professional development event section on the Academy part of the Tuco website. But you'll need login details to do that. But it will also be on the Tuco Facebook page and the Tuco YouTube page. I'll now hand over to Tom.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a slight good morning for me. I'm actually out in San Diego today, so if I'm a little bleary-eyed, apologies. So thanks very much for Tuco for inviting us to come and talk to you about Amazon Just Walk Out this morning. Really excited to be able to spend the next 30 minutes just talking through a few key things around sort of the background to Amazon Just Walk Out and why it was created, sort of some of our customers, both in and outside of the education sector, particularly higher education, an overview of some of the key components that make up the Amazon Just Walk Out technology and solution, and then perhaps most importantly, the benefits it kind of delivers to both kind of providers and also the end customer, being perhaps in this case students. So as Sarah mentioned, that we are going to be taking some questions throughout the session. I'll be honest with you, there's a lot to kind of cover in 30 minutes, so what we'll probably do is cover them at the end versus actually during the session itself. Okay. So just from a Just Walk Out perspective, and kind of from an Amazon perspective as well, there were really three key factors that led to the development of Amazon Just Walk Out, and it was actually quite a while ago, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But really, and actually, these kind of two or three key factors, two of them are kind of generic across sort of our business and across the industry of the sector of retail, and one of which being quite specific to higher education. So the first one is like customers prioritize convenience. I don't think there's anywhere in society today where doing something probably faster, particularly when it comes to shopping, isn't a kind of a key metric, and obviously some data down here to support that. The second one is that technology is becoming an increasingly key enabler for retail, right? So I don't think I know any retail organization, whether online or physical, who aren't implementing some form of technology to augment perhaps the customer experience, in some cases the fan experience, or very often the actual operating experience at the back end as well. But increasingly, this is becoming a game changer for many retailers. And then the third one is perhaps more specific to kind of higher education to a degree, but also just the future of retail is the kind of the next generation of shoppers, sort of talking to us about the fact that actually, technology is key to their decision-making process, whether that's online and also in physical retail environments, as to why they shop in those locations. So there are three kind of really important things that, and some of that is perhaps the Gen Z stuff is a little newer today, but actually the other two are very much, have been around for many, many decades now. And so back in kind of, I think it was 2013, Amazon was kind of already famous for enhancing customer experience through their online, and convenience online shopping with Amazon Prime. And, if we look back, for many may not even remember it, but the bookshop that was Amazon at one time. Things like speed of delivery, just convenience online, the Amazon Prime and that delivery piece, the functions and features. People forget now as well that, for example, negative reviews was something that Amazon actually created, and now they're just, pretty much general across most online websites and retail environments. And many of those technologies that we created in retail actually then were packaged up and sold out through Amazon Web Services, Amazon's cloud division. And that's kind of something that Amazon does an awful lot. And that really is very similar to what's happened here with Just Walk Out. So Amazon wanted to kind of bring those guiding principles apologies, I've skipped a slide too early there, but Amazon wanted to bring those guiding principles into the physical world because we had taken on our own physical environment, with Whole Foods, for example. And we said, like, how do we create that different experience in those physical environments, the things we've done online? And so back in 2013, we didn't want to just do something small. We said, look, actually, what if we could just get rid of the checkout entirely? And so we set on a journey at that point to really start looking at what that would mean for retail, what technology would be involved, what wasn't there today, and what would we need for the future. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because fundamentally, that was back in 2013. Here we are in 2024 today. And to get this kind of technology and the artificial intelligence, machine learning that supports our technology to work properly requires huge amounts of data and processing time, and humans in that loop as well, to help augment the data and help write the models that then underpin that data. And to say we've been doing that for sort of 11 years now, and created some really very complex vision algorithms and sensor algorithms that support the technology that we'll be talking about over the next 25 minutes. And the key thing is to support it, not just that it works, but works in a way that is actually highly reliable and highly accurate, because the key to our tech is that accuracy means that customers are happy and operators are happy. So all of that work was really key to us to be able to get to the point where we launched Amazon Just Walk Out. And one thing I'll clarify at this stage is that you may have seen Amazon Go and Fresh stores, and they effectively run using the Amazon Just Walk Out technology. But I work for Amazon Just Walk Out, who are the technology part of the business, and we're actually selling the technology and the solution to third-party retailers and locations to use in their independent sort of stores. So it isn't an Amazon retail environment, it's an Amazon technology underpinning a new retail environment. Okay. So just a couple of things here. So ultimately, like, there's two sides of what we kind of talk about the technology experience. Is the shopper experience. So the key there is creating that convenient, scalable, and secure environment for shoppers to shop in, an environment that kind of almost feels normal, a normal retail environment, but just super convenient and sort of fast for them to be able to get in and grab what they want and get out. And the tenant on the other side for the operator was reliability. So this has to work, 24/7. It needs to work, in a large scale environment. So what we mean by this is as many people can go in the store as the store can hold. It's not just like one or two every 2 minutes and someone has to hold them back. That store has to function, particularly in high footfall environments, at maximum capacity. And then from the security perspective, really important that authorization is part of the process, and we ensure people can pay. And again, I'll touch on that a little bit as we go through. So that's the background behind kind of Just Walk Out and why we created it and what we thought was the key underpinning sort of tenets to it. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about kind of our customers, because I think this is an important point to make here. So the key thing I want to cover here is that we are touching multiple sectors, and whilst today's is predominantly about higher education, actually we're in sports locations, we're in arenas, we're across travel, we're already in higher education, business and industry. So if you think headquarters, Amazon headquarters and others have got our stores in now. We're also in some of the fulfillment centers. But the important thing here is that by going into multiple sectors, we've learned a lot of lessons that actually then cross over into the different sectors and help augment our product portfolio into the other sectors. So a good example, if you take the Excel London, so whilst that is an exhibition centre, it still has the classic kind of peak periods, lots of people coming to the store at that point, and needs to service a lot of people at a peak time, which again is very similar to higher education at lunchtime or during the breaks for lectures. So that's been really interesting as well. So just going through some of these customers, appreciate we are an American company, and we've had probably experience in America before the UK, so they're a couple of years ahead of us, and you'll see that as I talk through some of the universities as well. But we're in hospitals, so Shrewsbury Hospital, University of Sussex, the University of San Diego, where I am today. I'm going to go and visit that a bit later. We are also in travel, so Hudson is using our technology across a number of airports. So What's also interesting here is that in many sectors, people have gone beyond what we call the pilot, so the single store. So in, I think, Lumenfield Stadium, they've got something like 15 stores now. In the O2 Arena in London, we have a second store launched just this month. So people are trusting the tech. Yes, there are still some pilots in terms of getting the right location, but in terms of trusting the technology to deliver what it promises, we're well beyond that today. And we're even seeing that in higher education as well. So within higher education, we have, I think it's about 23, but actually, if I look at the pipeline, I think we're up to about 30 now. And certainly in some of these locations, back to the trust piece and the pilot piece, some of these are running 2 or 3 stores. We've got one campus that has 3 stores and have pretty much replaced their entire traditional retail environment. So that's really exciting. And you can see there sort of Sussex University being the first one in the UK. And we've got a pipeline for others, which is really exciting as well. And we hope we can sort of have some conversations with some of the people who are joining this webinar to see what we can do with you. The other piece as well for us with higher education is payment partners. So we're increasingly working with some of the payment providers within this sector, because we know actually that it isn't just about sort of payment with cards and typical transactions. There are other methods. So in the background, we're doing what we can to make sure we can support the sort of the ecosystem of digital integration to make this work perfectly across the university environment. So I'm just going to go through a little bit. I'm not going to give you a deep dive on the entire Just Walk Out sort of store, but I just wanted to kind of talk you through like the key points within our store, the key kind of touch points that a user or a customer would experience, and an operator as well, to kind of get a sense as to how this works. So the first point is the individual in the sort of the who's approaching the barrier here. The first thing you do is you walk up to a barrier and you provide some form of, we'll call it authentication or authorization, i.e. a payment method. And so that can be a credit card, a mobile wallet. You can have the payment partner app. So you can, you might have a food and beverage provider, or you might have your own app that actually takes payment. And then the final one is going back to some of that integration. We can do kind of student badges or staff badges as well. So there's kind of no limitation to how you can actually get in and authorize yourself into that store. What you will notice is that Amazon's app is not there. So again, we're not an Amazon store, we're a third party. So actually we don't provide the facility to use the Amazon app to get into the store. It's all kind of independent payment methods. So lots of flexibility there. So just coming back to the store itself. So the individuals walked up to the gate, they've provided some form of payment. And at that point, we take a pre-auth, and that pre-auth is variable dependent on the store type. And it can be varied from day one to, from Monday maybe to Saturday. So you might have different events happening or different produce in the store of higher value. So you'd put the pre-auth up a little bit. We also, dependent on certain payment provider features, we can do fraud and abuse checks. So by the time the person's tapped the card and we've gone through that pre-auth, we've actually know quite a bit about them and whether they're a good or bad actor to decide whether we're going to let them into the store. And that has a major impact on shrinkage in itself, because once they've walked into the store and the shopper journey started, we effectively know that they're a good actor and that they're going to have the funds to pay for the goods that they take. So they've tapped, the barriers opened, the shopper journey started, and at that point, you see the cameras along the top. So the vision and AI technology kicks in, and it takes a kind of a rendering of the user, kind of a wireframe. There's no facial recognition at all. So that individual is now walking around the store. They're able to grab the items. So a key thing about the store is, whilst the items have to be in specific lanes and areas on the shelves, there isn't a sort of a specific product portfolio. You can use the store as a normal retail convenience, or in the case of stadiums and arenas, bars. We even have, pre-poured beers on bars for very high throughput. But in a kind of more traditional higher education kind of retail convenience outlet, you would imagine the portfolio would be exactly the same, similar sort of merchandise in that store. So the user then walks around, and the majority of the kind of the analytics of that individual as they walk around the store, we're moving much more to a vision only technology, or vision first. So the vision, the cameras do the checking of both what's on the shelves and how the user and the customer is interacting with it. But where we have small items, we also then use sensors as well on those shelves. And so if there's a small item that the hand can cover and the cameras can't see that, then the sensors work in the background with the cameras to detect if someone's picked something up is basically a weight sensor to then ensure absolute accuracy. And when we kind of design stores with our customers, we work out what the best kind of ratio of sensor and vision fusion to get the highest levels of accuracy in that store. In terms of accuracy, so accuracy, as I mentioned before, is absolutely key to us. And so I can't give you specific sort of accuracy figures because every store is different. But suffice to say, accuracy figures are in the very high 90 percentile. So it is extremely high. And what we often see is the very small amount of inaccurate calculations are completely outweighed by the reduction in shrinkage anyway. And that's a common theme we see across industries. In fact, massively outweighed, particularly in the current climate where shrinkage seems to be a real problem in many retail environments. So the last kind of two or three, so the MDF, as we call it, and the connectivity is effectively we have a sort of some technology in a box that either can sit behind a store or in a comms room, and that is what kind of then talks back up to the mothership, which is Amazon Web Services Cloud, to do sort of some of the processing. Although some can actually be done down on site. So if there was a connectivity failure, if someone decided to dig through a road and cut the wires, then we can continue to maintain the shopper experience, and then it syncs up later on. So again, back to that kind of operator resilience and reliability. That was a key thing that's we sort of have developed over the last couple of years. And then finally, once you've picked everything up, you can put it in bags. You can, you can literally put it in a bag that we provide. You can put it in your own bags. You can put it in your pocket. You just walk out. And then at that point, that is when we then process the virtual cart, as we call it, then goes for payment. And then a period later, the payment is processed onto the individual's payment mechanism. And the reason I say a period later is because it depends entirely on what they did in the store. So if they went in and grabbed a Coke and walked out, then that's a very fast shopper experience, very simple to process. But if they went in, talked to a load of people, picked stuff up and put it back, and had a sort of a more complicated journey, then obviously it takes longer to process the compute, and then the charge on the card may take a little longer. That's the crux of the kind of the store as a whole. I will say one thing: you can actually switch the entry gates to exit. So in many of our Amazon Go and Fresh stores, we're doing that. So you simply walk into the store as normal, and when you walk in, that's when the sensors detect you're there, the cameras. But when you walk out, that's when you tap and go out. So again, flexibility around the sort of the store format and shopper experience. The next key thing to talk about is many people think about our tech in kind of that traditional retail kind of in a replacing an existing convenience or retail environment, and that was the kind of the first sort of format we probably launched. But in reality, we've evolved over time. So we still very much have the retrofit, and actually our move to vision first has really opened many doors now in the last sort of 12 months around using existing retail environments, because we have to change less shelves and we can sort of retrofit the cameras but maintain the same fixtures and fittings. But a great environment for us, for example, in higher education, if there's halls of residence with a retail environment being allocated, so that white room, that white box, Just Walk Out's perfect for that, and we're seeing some fantastic business cases for that kind of net new store. We've also seen we've kind of created this notion of store kit, so not quite a pop-up, but a permanent pop-up. And if you take the University of Sussex, that's exactly what they've got. They have a frame that replaced an area in their sort of catering canteen area, and now they have a kind of a small retail convenience store there that was open for extended hours. So brilliant for creating additional revenue streams and retail environments that don't sit there today. And those frames can be very simple, really low cost entry, or like this Cibo Express, like quite a nice looking sort of store with wrap and screens on it. And then the final one is the kind of what we're calling the external store. So if you think about it as kind of like a container store or a prefabricated store. And in higher education, we think these are perfect in kind of real campus type environments. So fairly secure campuses, but where you want a extended shopping experience that sits outside a specific building and perhaps centrally to the campus, these would be great. So you can see lots of different kind of physical environments to put the technology in. We are a technology company, and we have many companies that we work with, design and fabrication, who can help build these sort of solutions around the technology to get the best environment for an end user or the location it sits within. So all this is lovely, but what does it mean? So the so what moment. So first of all, there's, I think it's sort of about 7 key benefits that we see, particularly in higher education. So the first one being increased store throughput. So at those peak times, if you think you don't have people self-checking out, so there's basically no queue or minimal queue, and if there is a queue, it moves very quickly. So if I take the case of the Excel Centre, they saw quite a weird phenomenon there where at peak times it almost looked like the store was empty, but it wasn't. And I'll talk to you about some of the figures because I've got a slide on that a bit later. But fundamentally, the ability for people to go through the barrier in what's about 3 or 4 seconds means that you can get a really steady flow, grabbing items and just out you go. So what does that mean? Ultimately, it means increased store performance, right? So you're getting more people through and you're seeing an uptick in revenue. And that's a really common feature for us across pretty much all of our stores, where the problem being addressed was addressing high footfall challenges. We've just seen a massive growth in store performance. The second one then is kind of enhanced shopper experience. Because they're not queuing, ultimately, you can go in, you can grab what you want and get out. It's just a great experience. But also within the store itself, the stores have to be laid out neatly. The produce, whilst it can be put down in the wrong place, and we can deal with that, we don't want that. So the team running the store, an important part of the operational side, is now putting things back and making the store looks tidy and neat. And that just creates a better experience when you go into the store versus a kind of a potentially a slightly messy retail environment that's just got a bit tired throughout the day because people are busy working on the tills or doing other sort of labour tasks. Now, really, they're doing tasks that just makes the shopper experience right, and that could be meeting and greeting people and helping them through the store as well, and just creating a really good experience. One of the key ones, particularly in higher education, is this expansion of operating hours as well. So for us, we see that as fundamental. And in some instances, we do have 24/7. What we would say importantly is we have to look at the viability of a 24/7 store. So the best allocation of this, and if I use higher education as a good example, like libraries, where there's often a security barrier already throughout the 24, so through the night. So you can't just got to get into the store at night. There has to be some level of security through that. And then once you're behind that, then the store, in a relatively secure environment, 24/7 is no problem. I say that with a little bit of sort of holding back a little bit because we have to do some security updates during the week. So it's not exactly 24/7, but the principle is there. And so we tend to call it expanded operating hours. And whether you close at midnight, but what we're seeing there is it's just creating, additional revenue periods. We hear most universities are often closing stores at 4:30 or 6 o'clock. So even going through to 9 or 10 o'clock is a real value add. And being able to create new product lines later at night, so sandwiches, so replacing effectively vending machines with a multi-buy opportunity with fresher food, so better for the students and better for the university to drive revenue. So we've already sort of touched on the reducing theft and loss. So again, the shrinkage element, we kind of, not only do you have to get through a barrier to then actually get into the store, but there is almost a secondary piece where our cameras don't work as CCTV. There still needs to be CCTV, but there's just a view that actually there's a lot of cameras there, and so there's a kind of a put off around that as well, just as a sort of a secondary pushback. But so that reduce and loss is very big. What I will say is, we can stop people stealing things. There will always be bad actors, and we can't stop that. What we can't stop is operating challenges. And one of the things we're working very hard at is helping support the operational team and the store managers, because it's new for them. And so it's really important to train the staff to understand how to stock the store and make sure that there aren't problems. We've had situations where staff have taken a trolley into a store and someone has taken items off the trolley and the staff didn't say, you can't do that. And therefore there was loss there. But we can't prevent that. And that's an operational side of things. So, but what we can do is use our tech when operated correctly. There is very, very minimal loss. And the final one, and I've had this conversation with a number of sort of senior people in universities, is just particularly in kind of research and engineering establishments, is just showcasing innovation within the university. So, saying to potential students, look, come and look at us. We're an innovative, forward-thinking university. We don't just say it, we're deploying the technologies to make your experience here even better, but also, show that we're interested in future technologies. So they're the kind of the key things that we see ultimately underpin the business case when we're looking at deploying stores and getting people on the journey. So just to set some examples on this, as I did make the point that we, are probably further ahead in the US today. I don't have details on Sussex. I really hope to be able to have those in sort of the coming weeks and months, so we'll be able to talk through that a bit, perhaps offline. But for now, the University of Dayton, so theirs was all about extending operating hours. You can see here from some of the statistics, so a significant increase for them, up 71% increase. But the key metric for me here is that 34% of shoppers in that store were doing it in the extended hours, not the typical time they would have done. So it showed there was a real uptick for them in shopping. And one of the reasons that they also talked about wanting that extended operating hours, and we're seeing in some of our conversations in the UK, is it helps keep people on site versus going into town late at night, for example. So being able to create a retail environment into the night is, really beneficial for safety as well as anything else. So University of Dayton, they've really had some success there. I talked about UC San Diego as well. So some really great metrics here. So again, they open multiple stores across the site, and they've just seen some major increases in the actual throughput they've seen go through there. So we've seen that 14% increase in daily transactions across all the stores. And they've seen some really great revenue growth there as well. So that's a real sort of shining light for us, that location, and has been a huge success. And as I say, opening multiple stores is sort of really, shows credibility to the solution itself. And I'm just going to talk about the XL because I say it's UK based, it's a UK market, but fundamentally the statistics there are just so impressive. So if you look at sort of 300% increase in the kind of capacity and throughput, and a 61% reduction in labour. So, I can't have a conversation with any university at the moment without talking about the challenges of, funds available to universities. I think the recent budget is impacting retail. In fact, I literally see daily now articles about retail challenges, all of the large operators, including us, in discussions with the government around this. So, this is a major area. So operating cost savings is an interesting one. We absolutely, we are able to run stores with significantly less individuals. So we have a store in our London office which actually isn't manned permanently. The catering team occasionally go over to that store and stock it and check it. And that is enabling us to run a store in our HQ with pretty much zero resource other than a couple of hours a day. So that kind of increased labour efficiency, I think, is going to become a really important point over the next sort of year or two as the impact of sort of the budget and just general university funding starts to really bite, if it hasn't already. And then one final one is, again, it's a hospital. It's a great use case for a different scenario. So in this case, it's Baycare St Joseph's, and they have created basically a cafe. So we have got a Just Walk Out cafe there. And you can kind of see it's a kind of traditional cafe environment with hot plates and sort of salad bars. But we also have a small retail environment in the corner. So when the cafe is not running, the little retail convenience store can continue to run. And like Telford Hospital in the UK, while Telford Hospital is just a retail environment, the feedback, not just from individuals using the store, but doctors and staff is huge. So their ability to get late night food as well, or even customers who are coming in to do night courses, their ability to sort of shop later on the way home has been really big. And now Baycare's parent company are opening sort of 3 more stores. So I think this kind of cafe of the future could be really interesting in higher education as well. Okay, so the last bit, just in the last sort of minute or two. So the other thing we're starting to get into is, if you think about, we have those cameras and we're seeing what people are doing throughout their shopping journey. So we basically have Just Walk Out analytics, and that enables us to basically understand what a shopper is doing. Now, at a macro level across multiple store environments or across a stadium, I mean, the data there is unbelievable. And, the ability to then potentially pass that back through to the FMCG, the fast moving consumer goods, organizations is really powerful. But even at a micro scale, if who's walked into, not who, sorry, but if someone's walked into the store and they have looked at an item, they've picked it up, we know the dwell time, they may have picked it up and put it back. Um, that is really powerful information to get the best out of a retail environment. So with our technology, not only can you actually get a more efficient and get the revenue generation through more people going through the store and a better experience, but you can also make sure that that store is operating its absolute optimum because you've got the right produce on the shelves based on data provided over a period of time. So that's a real value add, we think, as a secondary to the general capability of the technology. So, first of all, thank you very much for listening to me go on for sort of half an hour. I know it's quite a lot to fit in, so I've been talking a little bit quickly, so apologies. But I think we've now got 10 minutes to sort of open the floor up to some questions. I think I'm bang on time, Sarah.
You're absolutely bang on time. Thank you very much, Tom. Yes, so we've had quite a few questions. We've particularly had a number of questions regarding the approximate pricing for setting this up. So can you shed some light on this at all?
Yeah, definitely. So what I can't do is shed light on specific pricing. And we kind of don't do that. And for one particular reason is because actually pricing can vary. So the pricing for a retail environment, let's say a higher education, would be very different to an environment at a stadium where margins are completely different and the throughput's different. So what we talk about is a business case. So if you think about the benefits slide, all of those items, whether tangible or intangible, have a benefit that drives a commercial benefit or reduction effectively. And so what we do is we sit down with customers and we ask that, there's data provided around sales and operating costs, and we then come with an initial set of pricing. And what we ultimately do is we look at all those items and we build a business case to make sure that the pricing that we develop is right for both the potential customer and also that we're able to, run a business and be profitable ourselves. So it's very much around working together to build the best outcome. Now, we do also, when we start to scale, we look at kind of scale pricing as well with some of our partners, but that's the way we kind of do it. So we don't have like something I can put on screen here to say it's X value. But when we start working with customers and start going to a bit more detail and we have things like NDAs signed, we could actually start opening up around sort of some of our more rate cards and starting to give a view and then starting to give a view of which locations are perhaps right. So I know I haven't given a very specific answer and there's a very specific reason for that. But we work very closely to make sure we validate the viability of stores as early as we can to make sure that we're all working together on something that's going to be a great project going forward.
Thank you very much for that. So on viability, what's the best way to start identifying a suitable location for that viability?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple of things. So actually, one thing we talk about is like if you took our stores, if we went to a customer, let's say in an airport or even at a university, and there was a kind of a quiet space in the furthest corner of the university, but kind of a few students have said, "Oh, we wish there was a vending machine or something over there." Like, whilst you could put a store there and people would use it, it's probably not going to actually, drive a good business case. In all honesty, talking back about that pricing. So the first one is what problems are you addressing? And those problems do need to be generally some level of throughput challenge. So, those peak periods, shrinkage and theft can be a challenge. So that's another one. They're the kind of the two main ones, or again, operating costs. So thinking about a real problem statement. And we've found that particularly in the universities and the stadiums where someone was bold to say that is a real problem store for us because we just cannot get people through it in a time. They're the ones that have succeeded and gone on to actually deliver multiple stores. So it's an interesting one. Starting small and thinking you can go big is almost the reverse of the best way to get Just Walk Out to show its benefits. So that's the kind of the commercial viability side of things. The second one then is basic physical principles. So the easiest one to think about is sort of ceiling height. So our cameras have to be generally at a height of about 2.7 meters. So if you're sort of thinking of doing it in a small retail environment where there's a very low ceiling, then that generally doesn't work. We see in so many locations in universities, kind of the reception area, the foyer into the university or a building often have lovely, great big ceiling heights. So that's a kind of a perfect location sort of from a physical viability perspective. Obviously, it needs some level of connectivity and power, but that's fairly kind of obvious. But really, I think they're the two. So I have a very stiff neck from walking around many locations and campuses and just looking up at the ceiling to kind of first say, is that tall enough? And secondly, is it actually busy enough? So that's where we say libraries and often kind of lecture theatres and that kind of area, or the existing retail locations are generally really viable for higher education.
Excellent.
All right.
So you did mention in your presentation and earlier in the question you just answered then about shrinkage. What's the
Yeah.
average percent of shrinkage for current users of the system? And I just want to add something on that somebody's just submitted, which kind of links to it. So Tracy's saying, I often go to lunch with a friend or guest and I'm paying. How do I get them through the barrier if I've already had my card scanned? And how would you guard against pilferage? So that links back a little bit to shrinkage as well.
Yes, it does. Brilliant. So that's a great question, and it's I've missed something in my presentation. So thank you for bringing it up because I should have mentioned it when I did the store little sort of walkthrough. So like shrinkage, back to kind of it's really hard to put a number on shrinkage effectively because it totally depends on the location, the environment. So we've got some stores in some areas where there are, there were quite a number of bad actors, and in fact, it's really been interesting to see the bad actors start to sort of not actually even try and get into the store, and makes them realize how much shrinkage there was actually happening that they didn't even know about to a certain degree in that store when it was a traditional retail environment. So again, I can't give a figure specifically on it, but what I do know is that we are seeing very low shrinkage in comparison to where it was before. There will always be bad actors. We can't stop that, and there will always be people who want to trick the system. And some of that comes down to the operators and how they manage that store with things like signage. A great example of that to the second question, which is around kind of multiple people. So at the O2, for example, I was there the other night in the store there, and it's great because instead of having to have dad go to store A and mum to sort of store B in an arena, you can actually tap your card and then the whole family can go through on that card. And when the barrier then shuts, then all of those individuals are associated with that payment mechanism. But you're right, you do have to be careful. And this is part of the learning journey around people then trying to get in after you. And that again comes down to educating the users into the store. And I say in universities now, most of the students are kind of told in their first time they kind of use it to look behind you and make sure someone's not doing that. And there's generally now, as I said, like there isn't someone standing behind a till now. So often there will be someone during sort of the more peak periods at the barriers, welcoming people in, telling them, if there's sort of deals for the day, or if they just need any help using the kind of the system to kind of check for things like that as well. And worst case, if it happens, then someone can go to someone, an operator of the store during the shop and say, that person didn't come in with me, and it can be dealt with during the store journey as well. So, we have mechanisms to deal with the challenge afterwards, but generally there's an education piece as well. So I know that didn't give a full answer in terms of the actual shrinkage data, but what I can say is we are seeing shrinkage significantly less than where it was before. And again, that feeds into the business case.
Excellent. Someone's asking about how does the technology integrate with their existing systems?
Perfect. So so this is a really important point here, and it's one of the things we talk about early on in the kind of interface when we have with customers about, or someone's really interested and now wants to kind of move to the next step. So very often our customers say, yeah, we just want to get one of these stores in now. Like, this is really exciting. Let's get it in the next sort of couple of months. How do we do that? And that's great. And we actually have kind of two retail digital integration models. One is like we wrap it up as almost as a black box, and we can do all the payment processing, and then effectively there's some APIs where we pass data almost sort of manually into your systems, and then your accounting and finance teams can deal with that data accordingly. But if you're going to then expand to like multiple stores where we've got, for example, contract caterers or stadiums where they have multiple stores, actually that kind of passing of the data, and I'll use the word manual. It's not really manual, but in the scheme of things, it's relatively manual versus actually paying to have full integration to the POS systems and the back end systems. So if you're looking at thinking, say, we're going to do multiple stores, we really like this. Actually, we say to people, why don't you do some integration up front, or certainly think about doing that integration in parallel so that you're ready further down the line, effectively for the multiple stores. So we really try and work with people to say, look, think about the future of where this might go, because there are decisions you make today that might actually influence your decisions later and bring additional costs later that you perhaps could have mitigated up front. So we very much think about the shopper experience. So, for example, the gates in versus out, store operations, how are we going to impact that? What's best for store operations and the way the store works? Back office, we talked about accounting, financing, making sure they're on board and they go on the journey early on and understand the data that's going to be coming their way and how. And then the timescales of launching the store. Do you want to launch the store tomorrow because there's an event coming up and then Amazon deals with the data and the processing? Or actually, do you not need it for 6 months? You're better waiting a little bit, but getting all those systems in place. All right.
The last question I had is, do you have any stores in the education sector yet? But I think you've already covered that with the University of Sussex and the ones you've mentioned in the United States already. So
Yep, so about 30 plus actual stores now. And as I said, one in the UK, but the pipeline's looking very positive and there's some great discussions going on. The final thing I'll say I didn't talk about, Sarah, was we are in the process also of getting listed on a DPS agreement with Tuco, hoping to have that at the end of this year or very early next year. So the great thing is, we will have a procurement capability in the UK across universities. So that will hopefully unlock our ability to kind of put stores into the UK where there is a non-contract caterer, self-operated university.
Excellent. Thank you for letting us know that. Brilliant. So thank you as well for getting up so early in San Diego for us, Tom. And thank you everyone else for taking part in the session. If you've got any questions, Tom's obviously left his information on there for you, or you can get in touch with me, which is through the registration email, and we'll pass that on to Tom for you. Thank you again. I hope to see you in the next session, which is about AI and customer feedback with Touchwork. So thanks again, Tom. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Enjoy San Diego. See you later.
Bye.